Hi, I'm Chuck Colson with this week's 2-Minute Warning. If you come to the site often, you know that I'm passionate about teaching ethics and that I've devoted the past 2 years to produce a DVD teaching series called Doing the Right Thing. It's with Bert Hume and Princeton's Robbie George. Why have I done it? Let me explain. As almost everybody knows, there are physical laws that govern the universe. The laws we know are the result of decades, indeed centuries, of observation and empirical analysis. Take, for example, the laws of physics, or Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. Now, many people can't recite Newton's first law of motion. We all know, however, and live by certain physical laws. It's why sane people don't jump off of 10-story buildings. Laws of gravity, motion, thermodynamics, and on are part of the universe we live in. They are observable and predictable. They are the way the world works. How odd it is, then, that so many otherwise intelligent people refuse to recognize or even acknowledge the existence of moral laws. These laws are every bit a part and parcel of the universe we live in. Just as certain physical actions result in predictable reactions, so do moral actions create predictable consequences. Adultery, for example, always produces anger and jealousy. It destroys marriages. Broken marriages incur heavy societal costs. Every time I set foot inside a prison, I see the results of divorce and of splintered families. I've met thousands of prisoners from broken homes. More than 60% of prisoners grew up without a father. Some 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. Today on Breakpoint, I'm beginning a series about homosexual behavior, how it simply does not conform to moral reality, and how one leading psychiatrist is showing that kids who show signs of homosexuality don't have to grow up gay. Be sure to visit Breakpoint.org to check out my commentaries today through Friday. All of this is to say that if we want to live healthy lives, we need to understand and obey the moral laws by which God structured the universe. As Calvin Seminary President Cornelius Plantinga has written, wisdom in Scripture is, broadly speaking, the knowledge of God's world and the knack of fitting oneself into it. In other words, to be wise is to know reality, the way things really work, both physical and moral, and to live accordingly. Not to do so, Plantinga says, is to spit into the wind or cut against the grain of the universe. So, to give another example, when we deny moral reality, spend money we don't have, and manipulate financial markets, what happens? Well, in 2008, we found out a financial collapse. So again, this is why we produce Doing the Right Thing. America simply has to recapture its belief in right and wrong, in ethical behavior. Our prosperity, our freedoms, and our future depend on it. I do hope you'll get a copy of Doing the Right Thing at colsoncenter.org. Perfect for individual and group study, and a great video to show with non-believing friends and associates, because we purposely use the language of natural law so our arguments will be accessible to non-believers. Remember, it's the height of folly to step off a 10-story building, and just as dumb to deny or act against the moral laws of the universe. I'm Chuck Colson. That's this week's 2-Minute Warning.
Well, I don't think anyone can deny that we have a problem here.
We're in an ethical mess. I started working in the prisons 35 years ago. There were 229,000 people in prison. Today, there's 2.3 million.
The financial crisis has rocked the world and shaken markets worldwide.
Lenders were encouraged by the government to lend to less creditworthy buyers.
Almost everyone in a position of financial authority embraced it.
At the same time, they sold them short and hammered them like mad, raked in money at every level. They were deceiving the people they were dealing with.
Well, Wall Street not only saw no evil, but saw a great deal of virtue, which could be quantified in billions of dollars. That was the virtue of it.
Why are we surprised when there's a lack of ethics in the lenders, Wall Street, government? It's an inescapable consequence of neglecting moral training. That was a time when I should have stopped and said, wait a minute, Mr. President, think about the consequences of this. But I did not. Self-righteousness is believing you're so good that you couldn't be compromised. And that's the kind of pride that's fatal.
So ethics is following your own integrity or following your conscience. But what if you have a poorly formed conscience? What if you're a jerk?
problem is, in a Harvard Business School, there's no fundamental agreement on the way the world works. And so you're reduced to discussing practical behaviors.
If you're a purely accepted moral relativist position, then you have no ground on which to stand to say why another person is wrong.
The sure consequence of the attempt to liberate oneself from demanding moral norms and obligations is slavery.
It's resulting in more harm to the society in general than anything else in my lifetime. It is unutterably destructive. How's that working for you?